clock is ticking on the release of the DOJ's files on convicted pedophile and former friend of Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, after Trump announced that he had signed the bill late last night on social media, writing this, quote, "This latest hoax will backfire on the Democrats just as all of the rest have. Thank you for your attention to this matter." The bill orders that the files be released within the next 30 days, although the precise timing of that release still unclear, as is whether the Trump administration will attempt to withhold them. As the New York Times notes, quote, "Mr. Trump's signature does not guarantee the release of all the files." The bill contains significant exceptions, including a provision protecting continuing investigations, which could mean many documents would stay confidential. In a statement, the family of Virginia Giuffre wrote this, quote, "This work is not finished. Every name must be revealed, regardless of power, wealth, or party affiliation. For Virginia, her sisters, and survivors across the world, this is a momentous step towards a long overdue."
Okay, so the Department of Justice is in absolute chaos right now, and Attorney General Pam Bondi is at the center of what might be one of the most devastating scandals to hit the Trump administration in years. A federal judge just caught her office red-handed destroying evidence in a major case, and the fallout is massive. We're talking about potential obstruction of justice, a complete meltdown of credibility at DOJ, and serious questions about whether Bondi can even survive in this role. This isn't some minor procedural mistake. This is the kind of thing that ends careers, triggers investigations, and fundamentally undermines the rule of law. And it's happening right now in real time as the administration is already dealing with multiple crises on other fronts. Look, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. They'll either bury this story or turn it into partisan noise without giving you the real context. That's why we built this channel, to bring you real stories, real analysis, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. Here's what happened. A federal judge overseeing a high-profile case involving the Department of Justice issued a scathing order this week, revealing that Bondi's DOJ had systematically destroyed crucial evidence that was supposed to be preserved under a court order. We're not talking about a few missing emails or some accidental deletion. According to the judge's findings, the destruction was deliberate, extensive, and occurred after the court had explicitly ordered the preservation of all relevant documents and communications. The case itself involves allegations of misconduct within a federal agency, and the evidence that was destroyed reportedly included internal communications, policy documents, and records of meetings that would have been central to proving or disproving the allegations. The judge didn't mince words. In the written order, the court stated that the DOJ's actions appeared to constitute willful destruction of evidence, showed a pattern of evasion and obstruction, and demonstrated a fundamental disregard for the judicial process. The judge is now considering sanctions against the DOJ, including the possibility of adverse inference instructions, meaning the jury would be told to assume the destroyed evidence would have been damaging to the government's position. And here's where it gets worse. Multiple sources inside the DOJ are now saying that the destruction wasn't the work of some rogue staffer or an isolated mistake. It was coordinated, it involved senior officials, and it happened on Bondi's watch. Some are even suggesting that Bondi herself was aware of the situation and either authorized the destruction or failed to stop it when she had the opportunity. Now, Pam Bondi came into this job with a reputation already damaged by her time as Florida Attorney General, where she faced intense scrutiny over her decision not to pursue fraud charges against Trump University after receiving a political donation from Donald Trump. That controversy never fully went away, and it raised serious questions about her independence and her willingness to put political loyalty ahead of legal and ethical obligations. When Trump nominated her for Attorney General in his second term, the Senate confirmation was brutal. Democrats hammered her on the Trump University issue, on her track record of politicizing prosecutions, and on her close personal and political ties to Trump. She barely got confirmed, and even some Republicans expressed concerns about whether she could be trusted to run the DOJ independently. Fast forward to now, and those concerns are looking more justified than ever. This evidence destruction scandal is feeding into the narrative that Bondi is not an independent attorney general, that she's willing to bend or break the rules to protect the administration, and that the DOJ under her leadership has become just another arm of Trump's political operation rather than an independent institution dedicated to the rule of law. Let's talk about what the law actually says here, because this is important. Federal law is very clear when it comes to the preservation of evidence. Under the federal rules of civil procedure and various statutes governing the conduct of federal agencies, once litigation is reasonably anticipated, all relevant documents and communications must be preserved. This is called a litigation hold, and it's a fundamental principle of the legal system. The idea is simple. You can't destroy evidence that might be used in court, because doing so undermines the ability of the court and the parties to get to the truth. If you do destroy evidence, especially after a court has ordered you to preserve it, you're looking at serious consequences. The court can impose sanctions ranging from fines to adverse inference instructions to outright dismissal of claims or defenses. In extreme cases, it can even lead to criminal charges for obstruction of justice. Now, in this case, the judge found that the DOJ not only failed to preserve evidence, but actively destroyed it after being put on notice. That's not negligence. That's not an accident. That's obstruction. And the fact that this happened under Bondi Lee's leadership raises huge questions about what she knew, when she knew it, and what she did about it. Here's the problem. The Department of Justice is supposed to be the institution that enforces the law, that holds people accountable for destroying evidence and obstructing justice. But now the DOJ itself is the one being accused of these very crimes. That's a catastrophic breakdown of institutional integrity. It means that the agency responsible for prosecuting obstruction is the one committing it. And it raises the question, if the DOJ is willing to destroy evidence in one case, what's happening in other cases? How many other investigations or lawsuits have been compromised by similar conduct? Legal experts are already saying that this could open the floodgates to challenges in other cases where the DOJ is involved. Defense attorneys are going to start demanding discovery into whether evidence was preserved properly. Plaintiffs in civil cases against the government are going to be asking judges to investigate whether documents were destroyed. And Congress is almost certainly going to launch investigations into what happened here, who authorized it, and whether Bondi should be held accountable. And here's where this becomes a lot bigger than just one case. This evidence destruction scandal is happening at the same time that Bondi is trying to carry out some of Trump's most controversial legal and policy initiatives. She's been tasked with defending Trump's use of emergency powers to impose tariffs, with overseeing the prosecution of political opponents, with implementing aggressive immigration enforcement policies, and with pushing back against state and local governments that are resisting federal directives. In other words, Bondi is at the center of almost every major legal battle the administration is fighting. And now her credibility is completely shot. How can she stand up in court and argue that the administration is acting lawfully when her own department just got caught destroying evidence? How can she ask judges to trust the DOJ's representations when a federal judge just found that the DOJ willfully obstructed justice? The answer is she can't. Every case the DOJ is involved in is now tainted by this scandal. Every argument Bondi makes is going to be met with skepticism, and every judge is going to be looking at the DOJ with suspicion, wondering if they can trust anything the government says. Okay, let's break down what this actually means. First, understand that this is a full-blown crisis for the Department of Justice. The DOJ's most valuable asset is its credibility. Federal judges, defense attorneys, plaintiffs, and the public all need to be able to trust that the DOJ is operating in good faith, that it's following the rules, and that it's committed to the rule of law. When that trust is broken, the entire system starts to collapse. And right now, that trust is shattered. The fact that a federal judge found that the DOJ willfully destroyed evidence is going to be cited in courtrooms across the country for years. It's going to be used to challenge the DOJ's credibility in every case. It's going to be a stain on the institution that doesn't go away. Second, this puts Bondi's job in serious jeopardy. There are already calls from Democrats and even some Republicans for her to resign or be fired. House Democrats are talking about launching an investigation, and there's even speculation that this could lead to impeachment proceedings. Now, Trump is unlikely to fire Bondi, at least not immediately, because doing so would be an admission that he made a mistake in appointing her and would create even more chaos at the DOJ. But the pressure is going to be intense, and if more evidence comes out showing that Bondi was directly involved in the decision to destroy evidence, or that she tried to cover it up, even Trump might not be able to protect her. The political calculation here is brutal. Keeping Bondi means dealing with constant scandals, investigations, and credibility problems. Firing her means admitting failure and going through another confirmation battle in the Senate, which could be even uglier than the first one. Third, this scandal is going to have massive implications for the administration's broader legal strategy. Trump's second-term agenda depends on the DOJ being able to defend controversial policies in court, to prosecute the political opponents, and to push back against states and localities that are resisting federal authority. But all of that requires credibility. It requires judges to believe that the DOJ is acting in good faith, that it's following the law, and that it can be trusted. This evidence destruction scandal destroys that credibility. It gives judges a reason to scrutinize every DOJ filing more closely, to demand more proof, and to be more skeptical of the government's arguments. It gives opposing parties ammunition to attack the DOJ's credibility in every case. And it gives the administration's critics a powerful talking point. The DOJ can't be trusted, Bondi can't be trusted, and the entire Trump legal operation is corrupt. Fourth, this is going to energize Democrats heading into the 2026 midterms. Democrats are already running on the narrative that Trump is a threat to the rule of law, that he's abusing power, and that he's destroying democratic institutions. This evidence destruction scandal fits perfectly into that narrative. It's a clear, concrete example of the administration breaking the law, obstructing justice, and undermining the integrity of the legal system. Democrats are going to hammer this in campaign ads, in debates, and in speeches. They're going to use it to argue that the only way to restore the rule of law is to take back Congress and provide a check on the administration. And it's going to resonate especially with independent voters who are already skeptical of Trump and who care about institutional integrity. Fifth, this is going to have international ramifications. America's allies are already nervous about the unpredictability of the Trump administration, about the use of tariffs as a weapon, about secret diplomacy with adversaries, and about the administration's willingness to disregard international norms and agreements. Now they're watching the Attorney General of the United States get caught destroying evidence and obstructing justice. That sends a message. It tells allies that the Trump administration doesn't respect the rule of law, even domestically. It tells them that commitments and agreements with this administration can't be trusted because the people in charge are willing to break the rules when it suits them. European leaders, NATO officials, and other allies are going to be paying very close attention to how this plays out, and it's going to factor into their calculations about how much they can rely on the United States. And here's what you need to watch in the coming days and weeks. First, watch for the judge's next moves. The court has already indicated that sanctions are being considered, but the question is how severe those sanctions will be. Will the judge impose adverse inference instructions, essentially telling the jury to assume the destroyed evidence was damaging to the government? Will the judge dismiss parts of the government's case? Will the judge refer the matter to prosecutors for criminal investigation? Any of those outcomes would be devastating for the DOJ. Second, watch for congressional action. House Democrats are almost certainly going to launch an investigation, and they're going to demand testimony from Bondi and from the DOJ officials who were involved in the decision to destroy evidence. Those hearings are going to be brutal, and they're going to keep this story in the headlines for months. Third, watch for how other federal judges react. If judges in other cases start questioning the DOJ's credibility, demanding more transparency, or imposing stricter requirements on the government, that's a sign that the damage from this scandal is spreading. Fourth, watch for any additional revelations. Scandals like this rarely stay contained. Once the initial story breaks, more information usually comes out. Whistleblowers come forward, documents leak, journalists dig deeper. If more evidence emerges showing that the destruction was even more extensive or that Bondi was more directly involved, this could go from a major scandal to a crisis that forces her out of office. So here's the bottom line. Pam Bondi's career is in serious trouble. A federal judge just caught her DOJ red-handed destroying evidence, and the consequences are going to be massive. The DOJ's credibility is shattered. Bondi's job is in jeopardy. The administration's legal strategy is undermined. Democrats have a powerful issue for 2026, and America's allies are watching with alarm. This is not just a legal scandal. It's an institutional crisis that goes to the heart of whether the rule of law still means anything in this country. And it's happening at a time when the administration is already dealing with multiple other crises, from tariffs to foreign policy to domestic unrest. The next few weeks are going to be critical. We're going to see whether Bondi can survive, whether the DOJ can recover, and whether there are any real consequences for this kind of flagrant abuse of power. Keep your eyes on this. This story is far from over, and the fallout could reshape American politics and institutions for years to come.